I've tried to script this out a couple of times, actually. I knew that this day was gonna come eventually. This is a day that I've kind of been dreading. I was hoping it wouldn't come to this, but unfortunately it is going to. I'm going to be selling my Trek. And I realize that this is kind of this is a very self-indulgent idea, but I wanted to say farewell to it on camera because this bike has ultimately been a life-changing bike for me. I went through a period of really bad depression. I was struggling to find ways to stay motivated to be physical, to get exercise. This was the bike that got me out there and really gave me something to love. And it got me through a bunch of really hard times. This bike really has done more for me than I maybe let on sometimes. It's not just a bike. But aside from what it's done for me emotionally, physically, it's also taught me a lot. It's taught me a lot of physical skills, a lot of skills about how to ride a bike like this. But it's also taught me a lot about maintaining bikes. I have never paid, with one exception, for this bike to be fixed. And that exception was I needed to get Healy coils put in, because one of the problems is when you don't know what you're doing and you try to fix your own bike, you're gonna probably make the problem worse sometimes. And that happened to me. I stripped the post mount out on the forks trying to install my brakes. I just was over tensioning them and I stripped it. And you would think this is a brake, this needs to be on here super hard, but the truth is it's 6 Newton meters is not very much, turns out. Anyway, a hardtail is such a beautiful bike because it is simple. There isn't that much involved in this. You don't have the linkage to worry about. You don't have all these extra nuts and bolts to worry about. It's just, there's a purity to a hardtail that I will love forever. And because of that, it gave me the confidence to teach myself how to maintain this bike. Not only did this teach me how to maintain my bike, but it taught me all about the different spec levels of build kits. I was working with a guy for a while who was like, get an XT derailleur, it's the best. It's dumb that you're using another derailleur. And I just trusted him. I was like, okay, sure, what's that gonna cost me? It was like 80 bucks at the time, Canadian. Like that back when derailleurs were cheap. Old man yells at cloud. And I swapped it out. I noticed no difference in performance. I did not care one bit. Like with all my derailleurs, it got smashed off of the hanger and ultimately was destroyed anyway. So you start figuring out where you want to spend money, what's actually important to you. And this bike taught me a lot about that. This allowed me to do a 1x conversion when this used to be a 3x XC bike, and now it's a 1x10. I've been able to keep this bike running for 6 years. Now, admittedly, only 3 of those years I've been aggressively riding or riding with more intention. And so in the last 3 years, my fitness has improved dramatically, and that allowed me to even notice things about this bike that I didn't notice before. I can put enough power into this thing that I notice things like frame flex, which, when I was first starting out, I would never have even known was a thing. It's helped me to identify things that I need to look for in future bikes. It's taught me also, maybe most interestingly, how to work around the limitations of a bike. I learned so many skills on this thing because I hated riding my trails on it. Which kind of sounds crazy, but it's, when your front suspension compresses a lot, and it, packs up, you really, this suspension is great, but for really fast, repeated hits, it will pack up, and it will pack up very easily. It's only a medium spring in here, and I'm, 175 pounds. It's not gonna work. So you learn how to bunny hop over that stuff so that it doesn't happen. You learn how to unweight. You learn how to pick your line and really find those climbing lines that are gonna help you avoid some of that stuff. It just has been, from start to finish, a vehicle for learning. And I am super in its debt for that forever. And so I think this is something that, whoever ends up finding themselves in possession of this bike, I think they're gonna be really, really happy with it. And I hope that it also helps them progress in the same way that it helped me progress. And I hope also that they end up with some great memories out of the deal. The 2 bike packing trips that I've done on this bike, oh man, the first one through BC and the second one through a park in Alberta, They've both been grueling, like the most physically demanding kind of things that I've ever done. I've gotten mad and just been a horrible travel companion. But ultimately, the bike is always willing to forgive, as are my friends, fortunately enough. I blew my knee out on the last day of the first trip. It really went on the last day, but it was kind of like day 2 was where it started to give me problems. I had to stop in a town and buy a knee brace so that I could limp my way through the rest of that ride. And on that last climb before we got back to the car, it completely went out and I had to pedal back to the car with one foot. Without clips, just riding flats, ratcheting the whole way down. It was just the dumbest thing. I asked my buddy Tim why he invited me knowing that I wouldn't have the level of fitness that he had. And he told me that it was because he knew that I was too stubborn to quit. And it was probably about the most flattering thing anybody's ever said to me. And fortunately, it's not just me who's a stubborn animal. It's this bike as well. And so yeah, with that, I'm gonna shut it down. I could talk about this bike for hours and tell you all the stories and why I bought it and all that, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that I hope that my next bike can be as informative to me as this bike was. And I hope that your next bike and your current bike is teaching you a ton, not just about bike maintenance and about the places a bike can take you, but about who you are and what you can accomplish with what you got. Thanks for chatting with me today. Thanks for listening. I know it's a little bit rambly, but I appreciate you sticking around and letting me get some of this off my chest. For content completely unlike this, don't forget to like and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next one.